Sorry, Mrs. Casper,
Here.
Dr. Kennedy,
Here.
Mrs. Cocker,
Here.
Mr. Martin,
Here.
Mr. McCray,
Here.
Mr. Negrini,
Here.
Mr. Schneider,
Here.
Mr. Hart.
Here.
9 present, 0 absent.
Please stand for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag,
flag
Flag.
United States of America,
United States of America.
to the republic for which it
And
stands,
to the republic,
one nation, under God,
one nation, under God,
with liberty and
indivisible.
justice for all.
with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Maravich, we don't have any, unless to change, Mrs. Carroll, we don't have anyone to public participation this evening. Is that correct?
Correct.
Mr. Maravich, do you want to say anything?
No, I'll not. If it's all right, I won't read the statement then if we don't have anybody that's really listening to it. So,
All right, great.
thank you.
You're welcome. Item 1.6, request approval of the 2020 graduation proposal as attached and as presented in brief form by Dr. Trickett at this point.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Mr. Hart. As presented this evening, you'll see an attached slideshow which outlines the proposed graduation ceremony that we have to honor the 460 graduates of the class of 2020 from Wilson High School. This is kind of the culmination of about 5 or 6 weeks of work that has included feedback and different sharing of ideas and thoughts. It's also a reflection of the school district, our team, our high school teachers, our students, trying to navigate the constant change that we're seeing and hearing due to the situation that we're in. We feel that it is the best possible situation to honor our graduates and to provide them with a much needed sense of closure as they culminate their 13 years, most of them with us here at Wilson High School. Earlier today, all students and their families received an email from Dr. Weber, the high school principal, which outlines the event, which starts with a processional parade, we're calling it, through a small part of our community, being very strategic and working with our local municipalities and police departments to limit our interaction with state-owned roads, working with Jeff Simcox and the local police chief, fire police, really trying to make sure we're minimizing the impact on the community. Students will be processing that into our high school, where there will be 4 screens as large as 50 feet, displaying video and the ceremony that is being pre-recorded this week with many different people in a very traditional sense, trying to emulate really what we do every other year. That video will be streamed live to students' devices as well, just in case there are students in cars or grandparents or loved ones in different parts of the country that would like to tune in. They'll be able to do so by going to our website. The audio will be pushed out to that live stream, but it will also be pushed out to an FM channel where everyone at our parking lot can tune into the audio feed of the ceremony, where they'll be able to participate. A couple other fun things scheduled that evening to help honor our students. And then the night will close with fireworks that will be put on display on the backside of our campus. Again, to send our students out with a bang and hopefully make this event memorable for them and their families.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding the plan from any of the board members? Okay, looking for a motion to approve the graduation proposal as attached.
Motion McCray.
Second, Schneider.
First, Mr. Schneider second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Case,
Yes.
Mrs. Casper,
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker,
Yes.
Mr. Martin, Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. McCray,
Yes.
Mr. Negrini,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider,
Yes.
Mr. Hart.
Yes.
9-4, 0 against.
Under finance, under 2.1, we'll be looking to approve our 2020-2021 general fund proposed final budget as for presentation. Mr. Schlossman, I'll turn it over to you. Are we going to do the presentation?
Oh,
That's okay, Mike.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, go ahead, Chris. Mr. Schlossman.
Sorry. Okay, does everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. So before I begin with the slides, I just wanted to give some thanks to everyone who contributed to this project. This is typically a year-long project that the school undertakes each year. This had a couple of twists in it due to the fact that we were facing a pandemic during the budget preparation, which changed the landscape of the budget from when we started in the October timeframe until now. But I did want to specifically thank Dr. Faley and the Board Finance Committee, the entire district leadership team, all the budget responsible administrators who prepare and enter their own particular department budgets, the finance office staff, and just everyone who the entire school board who listened to many versions of this through board updates and finance committee meetings. And I just wanted to say thank you, that I appreciate everyone who helped to get us to this point. So where we're at is looking at the calendar. We have 3 key dates. Tonight's one of them, the proposed final budget adoption. After this presentation, we have a June 1st Finance Committee that's scheduled to review changes that are happening. We will still have 4 weeks to hear any new developments, and then with the final budget adoption on June 22nd. So just to go back to our mission statement, empowering our students to create their own future, that's what this budget intends to do. It also is designed to support our educational plan and maintain our facilities and honor our obligations, and to provide fiscal accountability to all of our stakeholders. In preparing this particular budget, it was, like I said, very challenging over and above normal years. One thing that we had to and will have to continue to consider as we go into the new year is we're going to have to be very flexible. It will be fluid. We will get new information each month. We'll see how local revenues are coming in each month, what the state, how their economic situation is panning out, federal money. So each month we're going to have to kind of go through and see how the assumptions in the current budget are meeting up to reality, and have to make decisions throughout the year. There's compounding effect types of decisions, and there's one-time effect decisions, which compounding year over year, we're going to be feeling those changes, and one time is just a one-shot infusion, which might be how 1920 ends up, what if we can put anything into our fund balances, if we would do a debt refinance or the use of any fund balances. So we're going to start by just looking at our student enrollment for the district and how it is increasing over time. As you can see, on October 1st, we were at 6,222 students. I think on this particular board agenda, at the end, you will see that as of May 15th, we had 6,240 students, or an increase of 18 over October's date. So this represents a 2.3% increase over the prior year, or a 4.2% over the past 6 years that this chart is showing. Our special education student enrollment, as part of that, is also increasing 6% over the prior year, or 14% over the past 5 years. And you can see the breakdown here in this graph or in this pie chart as to what percentage of our total population is regular education, special education, and gifted. The low-income student count is also increasing in Wilson School District. This shows a 1.2% over the prior year, or almost at 22% over the 6 years that are shown here. And you can see that 32% of our population is now in the low income category. So we're going to start talking about revenues first. And you can see the pie chart here shows Wilson's breakdown of our total revenues, local being 73%, state 25%, federal 2%. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more than probably typically we would do in a budget presentation, because the local revenues are what's mostly being affected by our current COVID economic environment. So when we were developing this budget, we realized that the community is hurting. There's an economic strain because of COVID-19. And we knew that it would be very challenging to raise tax millage at this time. So this budget does include a zero millage increase for our community. Another thing we have to keep in mind is that as people in the community are trying to pay their bills, the collection rate, we will have to drop that slightly in the budget preparation. Typically, we're at 97%. We're dropping that a couple percentage points. There's still talk at Harrisburg about tax payment period adjustments. The district still has time to look at that before the final budget is passed in June. We did encounter real estate assessment appeals throughout this year, even pre-COVID-19. The assessment appeals resulted in a $38 million decrease in our assessments, which was significant, which had us in a challenging budget to begin with in the fall. We're also affecting other local tax line items that are listed here, which we'll show in a different slide how those numbers shake out. Our state revenues, basically at this point, we're showing them to be flat. We haven't heard from the state as to what their budget proposal looks like post-COVID-19. So they might be reducing our state levels by the dollar amount that we're receiving additional federal funds. We don't know that yet. We did apply for an equity grant, but we were not one of the schools chosen. For federal revenues, there's an ESSER funds that are designated for state K through 12 schools. Wilson is allocated to get over $500,000. This may affect our state funding and what the state will give to us. At this point, we're going to book 75% of that into our budget. So these are the numbers for budgeted revenues. In yellow is the proposed final budget for 2021. With the total overall revenue of $103,500,000, a decrease of $3.5 million. Mostly, if not all, local is what's being affected, with state and federal slight increases. So you can see here on this slide the local revenues and the breakdown of how these are affected. The most being the current real estate tax. And that's because of the $38 million of assessment appeal reductions that we sustained this year, as well as the reduction of the collection percentage. And then you can see the different percentages that were used to prepare for the economic strain that our local community is going through with the various taxes. Interim tax being reduced 50%, transfer tax 30%, business privilege tax 23%, and so on and so forth. Interest income obviously is a result of the market as well. So overall, local revenue is a reduction of $4.5 million or 4.6%. So total local revenues, you can see for 2021 is going to be budgeted at the lowest point in 5 years. So you can see what this current predicted economic environment is doing to the district budget. So this slide shows the millage rate at 0 mills. So we will not be having a real estate tax millage increase this year. So the millage will stay at 26.26, the same as the current year. The district had the ability to raise taxes by 3.2% or 0.84 mills. This budget does not include a millage increase as we are sensitive to the current economic environment in our local community. Last year at this time, we were second to the bottom of the 18 schools millage rates. We do not have the results of what the school districts are proposing for this year, but that's where we were last year. So we will see how that all shakes out when everyone passes their budget. So a few slides here about local revenues. This just shows graphically our assessment decline in this year. So you can see that we sustained a 1.57% assessment decline. In the future years out, as we look to project 5 years out in our budgeting process, we're looking that we're not going to have a net change next year. So we probably will have assessment appeals. We're hoping we'll have some assessment increases to get us to a flat line. And then we're projecting that we'll have an increase again of 0.6% over the next 2 years and 1% over the last year. Actual and base index will be affected by the economy, not quite so much in the next year because it's a 3-year average, but it's expected that this might dip. Now, this isn't a published rate, this is just a guess estimates. The blue line is what was published as estimates going forward. So there might be a gap in here, and we will have to see what that looks like this fall. Earned income tax projections, you can see this is dipping down. We're hoping all these projections as we do our 5-year outlook to be fully recovered within the 5 years, hopefully sooner. Same with business privilege tax. And interest investment income will possibly have a slower incline, but we hope that it will bounce back really soon. So the state revenues increased $600,000, mostly due to the increase in FICA and PEAS subsidy, which is a result of the increase in expense. We do have a slight increase in our scheduled subsidy for our debt service. And the federal revenues were showing 75% of the ESSER CARES Act at this point in the proposed final. So when we talk about expenses, the district spends 60% of all expenses on instruction, 27% on support services, 2% on student activities and community services, 10% on debt service, and we have $1 million of budgetary reserve built into the budget. So functions, which we just looked at, are listed here, and these are the dollar amounts for the various functions, total budget expenditures of $114.4 million. The entire increase is within the instruction and support services categories. Support services includes all student services, including nursing, student accounting. It includes all the central administration, transportation, operations, business office, IT department, all of those departments. This is another way to slice the pie, which is expenditures by object, which shows that 76% of all of our expenditures are salaries and benefits. Again, debt service is 10%. Other non-personnel costs are 13%. So that's everything that's not salaries and benefits or debt. So supplies, fuel, utilities, all of it. And here's the breakdown, same expenditure number in total, but broken down by those object categories. All of the increase is in the salary and benefits object. So the $3.9 million increase is a combination of many things. We do have the addition of 2 autistic support teachers in the budget. We do have the WEA contract increase of 3.1%. It is the 4th year of the 4-year contract. The administration and support staff did agree to a pay freeze in this budget. We did have adjustments to staffing during the current year, and we also have reductions in our budget and staffing costs for the 2021 year, totaling almost $1 million. So we were offsetting some of those adjustments from the current year. The PEASERS rate went up by 0.22% to 34.51% for the employer rate. We had some increased costs with FICA and workers' comp due to the increase in salaries. And we have health insurance premiums budgeted at 2% at the moment. However, the Health Trust has not had their final vote yet. So that will be one of the items that may change between now and June. So here are the PSERS rates. This is historical. You can see the sharp incline here. And then the green bar here in the out years is just an estimate. The blue line is what was published pre-COVID-19. There will be new estimates that will be thrown out there to be published this fall. So we will see what kind of impact that will have on the district over the next 5 years. Our current debt service, which makes up 10% of our budget, is listed here. We have 7 years yet to pay off $73 million. In the non-personnel costs, there were no changes to that line category, but there were offsets. So there were decreases in building and department budgets overall. There were central services budget decreases, extracurricular budget decreases, and they were offset by the need to increase our budgeting for special education, student tuition, liability, and legal costs. Our special education costs are shown graphically here. As you can see, we're at almost $19 million for 2021, but you can see in the dark blue bar, that's the portion that the state and federal subsidies pay for. So in this year, as you can see, as a percentage of the total, this was about 34%, and here it's only 20%. So even though our costs went up, the local share has obviously taken the brunt of that. However, when we look across the county at the other schools and what their special education expenditures are as a total of their total operating expenses, Wilson is really in the middle. We're under average, which is 17.69% last year, and that shows by the red bar there. The student tuition expenditures, which include charter schools, special education placements, VOTEC, all the tuition that the district pays other entities to educate our students is exceeding $5 million this year. And you can see the different components that are listed here. Charter schools at this point make up 21% of that bar. But again, as we look across the county, how that plays out in a percentage of total operating expenses, we are neck and neck with Exeter being third to the bottom in the county, and we are definitely below the average, which is 7.75% of total operating expenses. Our per student spending comparison across the county also shows a good picture for Wilson. Wilson is depicted by the blue bar, and the average of the 18 Berks County districts is depicted by the orange bar. And you can see we are well below average for total student spending. So it's total spending divided by our student population. This does not include any type of fund transfers out of the general fund. So when we look at how this all comes together, we have total revenues of $103.5 million, total expenditures of $114.4 million, a deficit of 10.9. We have a budgetary reserve, which we remove as that is for unforeseen types of things. We keep in the assigned fund balance for a total deficit of $9.9 million. So one of the areas that we can do to cover that gap for this 1 year out is scoop refunding. Basically, it would give us the ability to take about $7 million of our debt principal that's due and push it back to year 8 and 9. And there is a cost that's associated with that of $1.2 million, but that would give us the ability to help balance the current year budget based on the assumptions that are built in. So if we would apply that, the net effect would be $6.8 million after costs to have a remaining deficit to cover of $3.1 million. We look to our fund balances. Those that can be used are committed and unassigned fund balances. And this is a chart which shows what we're predicting to have at the beginning of this budget year of $16 million, assuming that 1920 has a deficit of 2.5. If we do better than that, it won't take this amount out and will infuse it back into our fund balances, which can be used to help offset deficits in other years as well. Our capital funds consist of capital reserve fund balances and capital projects funds. Capital reserve funds are, and all of the capital projects funds are for the acquisition and construction of major capital equipment and facilities. The only thing that can be used in a general fund budget capacity is nothing can be transferred back. Capital reserve funds can be used to pay for debt principal if necessary. The bond funds must be used on what was budgeted when those bonds were taken out. So this is what those fund balances look like. At the end of June is projected that there's $14 million in there, with capital reserve making up 7.5 million of that. So at this point, if we're using committed fund balance of 3.1 million, we would have our deficit completely covered. So what this would look like after the scoop refunding and using the PSERS committed fund balance, we would have total revenues of 110.5 million, which includes the $7 million of refunded debt, total expenditures of 114.6 million, which includes $200,000 of refunding costs, for an ending deficit of 4.1 million, covered by the committed PSERS fund balance and the budgetary reserve sitting in the assigned fund balance. The general fund projections, after we would incorporate this budget, would show this is where we're starting at July 1, potentially. Here's the $3.1 million of deficit that we're using committed fund balance for, and this is where we'd end up at the end of next year. Our school board has a fund balance policy, which requires the unassigned fund balance, this line here that I'm pointing to be 3% of the subsequent year's expenditures, budgeted expenditures. So you can see we're not quite meeting that. We're actually in the negative. So there's a notation here that we will have to adjust as we go to see how this year actually shakes out with the economy. And there will need to be significant expenditure cuts in order to maintain our school board policy. So that concludes the presentation of where we're at for the proposed final budget adoption. We still have 4 weeks. We will be presenting a final budget adoption on June 22nd. In between now and then, we will adjust line items as additional information becomes available to us. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schlossman. Looking for a motion to move 2020-2021 general fund proposed final budget. I have a first from Mr. Martin. I have a second.
Second, Negrini.
Mr. Negrini. Any discussion?
Mr.
Any
Hart.
questions? Go ahead.
I think it's important to also point out, as Ms. Schlossman had indicated, that we have lost $38 million in real estate assessment. We still have some real estate assessment appeals in the pipeline, one of which is the Berkshire Mall. Conservatively speaking, we're looking at potentially losing out in another $23 million in real estate assessments for the upcoming year. It's also important to remember that, pursuant to our school board policy number 620, as indicated on page 43 of the presentation, when we go below 3%, and as Ms. Schlossman indicated, what is projected for June of 21, it puts us in the negative. The district is precluded from using any of the fund balance to balance the budget in the following year. So if those deficits do come to fruition, as indicated, the significant cuts for the 21-22 year is significant. This projected budget with the cuts that we've indicated was with the tool similar to a scalpel. And what could end up happening for 21-22 would require cuts with a much more blunt instrument. And that's scary. I hope the economy turns around. I hope some of those numbers go up. But if we find ourselves in the same predicament the following winter and into the spring, where, as it's been discussed, that the COVID-19 could be much more problematic the second time around, and we find ourselves closing up again, and the economy goes back into the toilet. Some of these projections are going to come to fruition, and it doesn't look good for 21-22's budget process. So let's keep our fingers crossed. But obviously, this is a work in progress that could certainly see some changes in the coming months. But we're trying to be mindful of obviously our constituents hurting right now, and that's why we're recommending a zero tax increase. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion or questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9-4, against.
2.2, looking for a request for the approval of the resolution to reduce the minimum required payment of estimated mercantile and business privilege taxes for 2020 to no less than 75% of 2019 tax without incurring penalties. 2.3, request approval of the addendum to the Berks Lanes advertising contract, extending monthly payments during the state of emergency closure and extending the contract for the same number of months upon the reopening of Berks Lanes. 2.4, request approval of the budget transfers dated April 16, 2020 through May 13, 2020. Do I have a motion?
Martin moves.
Mr. Martin first, second.
Cocker, second.
Mr. Cocker, thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9-4, against.
Request to approve the minutes of the school board meeting held on May 4th, 2020 as attached. Have a first.
Schneider.
Mr. Schneider first.
Case
Second.
second.
Mr. Case second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Treasurer's report, Mr. Martin.
Mr. President, I submit for the approval tonight the Treasury report, the investment report, general fund report, and the financial reports as presented.
Is there a second?
Negrini, second.
Mr. DeGreen, second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9-4, against.
Payment of bills, Mr. Martin.
Mr. President, I submit for approval tonight bills in the amount of $2,930,973.70 out of the general fund and $15,535.91 out of the 2019 A construction fund.
Have a second.
Casper,
McCray,
second.
second.
Casper, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Case? I'm sorry, Mr. Case?
Might be frozen. I'll come back to him at the end. Maybe.
He gave you a thumbs up.
Did he? Okay. Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9-4, 0 against.
Thank you. Financial reports, Mr. Martin.
Mr. President, I submit for approval the following financial reports for the month of April. The cafeteria report, child care, Southern Middle School account, West Middle School account, and the senior high account.
Do I have a second?
Schneider?
Mr. Schneider. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Case? Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9-4, 0 against.
Superintendent's report, Dr. Paisley.
Thank you, President Hart. It's my privilege to present this evening the superintendent's report, inclusive of personnel and program recommendations.
Do I have a motion?
Cocker.
Mr. Cocker first. Do I have a second?
Casper.
McCray?
Mr. McCray second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Just
I'm
a
sorry,
little
go
bit of discussion, if we can, if someone could just talk to the point of 7.3, what the impact to our district's going to be?
Mr. Hart, can you read 7.3, please?
Get to it. Give me 1 minute. Minimize my screen. All right, here we go. It's try to read this properly. Change in status for Frank Russell, school bus driver. Elimination of curriculum liaison positions effective of the 2019-20 school year. Elimination of middle school library aides effective the end of the 2019-20 school year. Elimination of REACH hourly teachers effective at the end of 2019-20 school year. Elimination of summer library hours. Elimination of Spanish functionality for the workplace effective the end of the 19-20 school year. Elimination of virtual driver's education stipend effective the end of the 19-20 school year. Good. Dr. Bailey, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you. So the items that you see on the superintendent's report this evening are included as reduction in expenditures in the proposed final budget. The impact that this will have across our organization is it will impact our hourly teachers at our elementary school level. Eliminating those positions will require us to look at how we schedule our specials next fall at the elementary level, perhaps doubling up on physical education, art, and music in the 6-day cycle. It will require our classroom teachers to assume portions of our second step curriculum and embed that in the lessons that they currently are teaching from a social skill standpoint. In terms of the elimination of the library assistants at the middle school, obviously there will be 2 less individuals in our district in the library services department. Doing specific functions of cataloging books, etc. So across the organization, these positions the district has built over time, and they've become part of how Wilson has conducted business. in our educational settings. But in the environment that we're currently in and having to make expenditure cuts in order to make sure that we realize the ability to balance our budget, these were the positions that over the course of the last 2 months, the administrative team has worked together to try to keep these cuts as far away from the classroom teacher as possible. And these were the cuts that we settled on moving forward. As Mrs. Schlossman has indicated, those expenditure cuts are to the tune of $900,000, which helped us with our proposed final budget presentation this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Fraley. I think it's important to the public in our district to understand decisions that we're making as an administration in your group.
Any other discussion or comments? Mrs. Carroll, we have a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Case,
Yes.
Mrs. Casper,
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. McCray,
Yes.
Mr. Negrini,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider,
Yes.
Mr. Hart.
Yes.
9-4, 0 against.
Under consent items, donations. Accept with gratitude the following donations from Gogglersville Fire Company, a check for $15,000 to be used for 15 $1,000 educational scholarships to seniors. I go first.
Negrini.
Negrini first, a second.
Kennedy.
Okay.
Dr. Kennedy second. Any discussion?
Mr. Hart.
Yes.
I believe as long as I've been on the board, and it's going on 10 years, I think Gogglersville Fire Company every year has donated this amount of money towards scholarships. It's a wonderful, generous member of our community that's giving back to education. And I think a thank you is just not enough. It's just above and beyond, and it's well appreciated, and I know those students appreciate it very much. So I think it should be acknowledged how long Gogglersville has been doing this for the district.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. Under Human Resources, 9.1, request ratification of Article 22, subsection 22.1.4 of the collective bargaining agreement, extending the retirement date from February 1st, 2020 to June 12, 2020. This extension sunsets on June 12, 2020. 9.2, request to approve the memorandum of understanding for teachers' last day of school for 2020. Looking to approve human resource items from 9.1 to 9.2. Do I have the first?
Negrini.
Mr. Negrini first. Do we have a second?
Schneider.
Mr. Schneider. Any discussion?
Mr. Hart.
Yes.
Regarding 9.1, obviously, if there are some teachers within the district that does decide to take advantage of this extension, there would be a cost savings to the district, and certainly that would be a factor moving forward relative to passing our final budget, and that is the reason why that the district has moved forward with this proposition. Certainly, there are many excellent teachers still with the district towards the end of their teaching career. It's not should not be viewed as a means of trying to seek retirement of very good teachers that we have, but certainly this online learning environment and what may be part of the curriculum for the 2021 school year may provide some second thoughts for some teachers that were thinking about staying on for another year. So again, we're not looking to push anybody out the door, but this is being viewed as a potential cost saving to the district.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, we have a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Case,
Yes.
Mrs. Casper,
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. McCray,
Yes.
Mr. Negrini,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider,
Yes.
Mr. Hart.
Yes.
9-4, 0 against.
Under technology, 10.1, request approval to enter into a 36-month lease with Dell Financial Services for secondary students, Dell Chromebooks, grades 7 and 10, at an annual cost of $94,183.43. 10.2, request approval to enter into a 48-month lease with Dell Financial Services for middle school teacher Dell laptops at an annual cost of $12,397.39. 10.3, request approval to enter into a 60-month lease with Dell Financial Services for office and classroom use Dell desktop computers at an annual cost of $34,858.22. 10.4, request approval for a 24-month renewal with GoGuardian Admin Web filtering product for the district at an annual cost of $22,812.50. And we're looking for a motion to approve the technology and media items 10.1 through 10.4. Do I have a first?
Schneider.
Mr. Schneider first, and second.
McCray.
Mr. McCray, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Case,
Yes.
Mrs. Casper,
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. McCray,
Yes.
Mr. Negrini,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider,
Yes.
Mr. Hart.
Yes.
9-4, 0 against.
Under student services, 11.1, request to approve the revised Caring Foundation service agreement for a student assistance program for services during the 2020-2021 school year at a cost of $39,013.00 as attached. 11.2, request approval of summer hours for school nurses, school counselors, and school psychologists as presented. 11.3, request approval of a settlement agreement and release for a special education student in the amount of $1,000 for documented attorney fees. 11.4, request approval to contract with New Story for 4 special education students at a cost of $380 per student per day, beginning June 22nd, 2020, and ending July 31st, 2020, for 5 days a week, excluding July 3rd and July 29th, 2020. 11.5, request to approve the contract with Hogan Learning Academy for 7 special education students for extended school year services at a cost of $400 per student per day, beginning July 6, 2020, and ending August 7, 2020. Looking to approve items 11.1 through 11.5. Have a motion.
Casper.
Mrs. Casper first, second.
Martin.
Mr. Martin second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Case,
Yes.
Mrs. Casper,
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. McCray,
Yes.
Mr. Negrini,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider,
Yes.
Mr. Hart.
Yes.
9-4, 0 against.
Under operations, 12.1, request to approve the contract with International Fireworks for the graduation event fireworks May 29, 2020, as per the attached. Fireworks will be paid through private donors to the Wilson Education Foundation. Can I have a motion?
So moved, Case.
Martin.
Mr. Case first, Mr. Martin second. Any discussion?
I'd like to say thank you to whoever donated the fireworks because I do think it's pretty awesome that our graduating class will get them.
Any other comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Case,
Yes.
Mrs. Casper,
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
yes,
Mr. McCray,
Yes.
Mr. Negrini,
Yes.
Mr. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. Hart.
Yes.
9-4, 0 against.
Under miscellaneous, we have the enrollment report. And then we go to committee reports. Berks Career and Technology Center, Mrs. Casper.
No report.
Berks County IU and Curriculum Council, Dr. Kennedy.
Neither the IU or the curriculum committee has met. We're meeting May 27th for our next curriculum meeting.
Thank you. Berks IT, Mr. Schlossman.
No report. We have not met.
Extracurricular Committee, Mrs. Cocker.
Yes, we had a virtual meeting last Monday at noon. We discussed the possibility of decreased revenues for next year due to uncertainties in what our extracurricular settings will look like when it comes to people in the stands, and it's just, we don't know. So as reflected in the proposed budget, there are efforts to, due to the decreased possible revenue, decreasing the budget for extracurriculars. And just like everything else, that'll be on a working basis, depending on what comes our way information-wise. Thank you.
Facilities Committee, Mr. Negrini.
Thank you, President Hart. The engineering documents have been sent out for bidding for the natatorium process. We're waiting for those bids to come back. Hopefully, we are in a position to put this on the agenda for our June meeting. It is expected to take between 3 and 4 months for some of these renovations to take place, most significantly the HVAC. So as soon as we have that back, there will be further discussion on that project. And we are finalizing the bid contracts for the portable classrooms over at Whitfield. That may be on next meeting's agenda as well. So that's my report.
Great, thank you. Finance Committee, Ms. Martin.
yes, Mr. President, I want to thank Christine, her staff, the administration, and the board for all their patience and the work that has to be done still with this budget. It's a trying times, but I think we presented a good budget. And once again, thanks for passing it, and that's my report.
Thank you. Under Human Resources, I have no report, but I would like to say thank you to all the employees of Wilson School District for the past year, and especially through these trying times over the past several months. We truly appreciate all that you do for the district, for the students, and for the community. So thank you. Legislative report, Mr. Martin.
There's quite a bit of legislative actions looking pending in the House. We'll know a lot more at the next meeting. I mean, there's some good bills, there's some bad bills, and everything in between. But right now, we have to sit and let them work through this process.
Thank you. Public Relations, Mrs. Troutman.
Sure, thank you. Just wanted to give a quick update. I had announced at the last board meeting that we were going to run a thought exchange with our community, which has been completed. The question we asked was, as we manage the impact of COVID-19, what are the most important things the Wilson School District should consider to best support our students and families? And I'm pleased to say we had great participation. We had over 570 people participate in the exchange, and over 17,000 ratings were provided on the thoughts that our community shared with us. So that exchange closed late last week. So I'll be analyzing all the data and providing a full report both to the board as well as the community on those results. Also want to share some Wilson good news. The Reading Berks Science and Engineering Fair moved to a virtual format, and we had 3 students from the Wilson School District continue with the fair and enter their projects. And I'm excited to say that they all placed. Wilson Southern's 7th grader, Sindora Shradhar, won first place in the natural division for her project, Genetically Modified Foods, Hype or Not. 12th grader, Shaira Argawa, earned a 3rd place finish in the Medicine and Health Senior Division for her project on the cognitive functions of unicellular organisms. And then finally, this is the best news, 12th grader Krishna Nayak won the prestigious overall grand champion for the entire fair for her Earth and Environment entry titled Removal of Crystal Violet Pollution Using Biosorption. A lot of us had a chance to look at her paper, and I can tell you it is absolutely astounding. Incredible. We are so incredibly proud of her. It's amazing. She was featured in a Reading Eagle article, which was awesome to see something so positive in the newspaper. That was exciting. And she worked, I believe, almost 2 full years with high school chemistry teacher Robin Timpson on this project. So this is a huge, huge accomplishment for this student, and we could not be more proud. Thank you.
Thank you. Education Foundation, Mr. Case.
I just want to, and the entire Wilson Education Foundation, a big thank you. They're working hard, working with our community and our finding and working with donors and our teachers and administration to help make this our seniors graduation a really special day. You know, for instance, with the fireworks, etc. So they're busy behind the scenes. I just want to give them a shout out and say thank you. Our next meeting with the WEF is June 12th at 9 a.m. and it's going to be online. So if anyone here would like to attend it, please reach out to Molly Mack and they'll get you set up. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Technology, Mr. Schneider.
We have not met. Our next meeting is June the 1st. So I have nothing to report at this time.
Thank you. Student Outreach, Ms. Carolyn Patorik.
Hello, thank you for letting me speak on behalf of the students tonight. Despite not being in school, students have been pushing through to complete their classes online to finish the end of the year. This will be seniors last week, with everyone else ending next week. Many students have also been participating in the virtual AP exams this year. Testing started last week and goes through this week. Make sure to wish any student who's taking one luck, because it's definitely a different style test than what most students have been preparing for. Members of FBLA competed in the state competition in a virtual format last week. Congratulations to Aaron Z, Nikki Pasternak, Josh Cunningham, and Aiden D'Souza for placing within the top 10 in their event. They will be competing in the national competition in June. Student government also had their elections for their new officers, and I am very happy to announce that Gianni Clark will be the president for next year and take the place as the student body representative on the school board. I will hopefully be able to officially introduce her to the board at the next meeting. Looking into the next 2 weeks, seniors are very excited to be able to graduate all together in the drive-in graduation. Speaking on behalf of all the seniors, I would like to thank all those who have been helping to plan and coordinate this event. It will definitely be one to remember. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good luck to you. Well, I think you'll be at our next meeting, but congratulations to all the graduating seniors this year. So good luck to you. Mr. Moravich, any report? We have no participation.
Yeah, no report.
Okay. I have a motion to adjourn the meeting, please.
McCray.
Mr. McCray first, second.
Schneider.
Mr. Schneider. Thank you, everyone. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.